Welcome to Rise Like an Eagle, where stories of struggle are met with scripture and pain finds purpose through Christ. Isaiah 40:31 says, "But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint."
Rise like an eagle. Rise like an eagle.
Each of the people you'll hear about faced crushing setbacks. But in their perseverance, we find echoes of God's promises. What does it mean to overcome with grace? In this short reflection, we look at two stories of resilience, not just through strength, but through purpose. Their lives are proof that even in suffering, God can still write something beautiful.
Beethoven from Bonn, Germany. He was deaf, but never silent. Ludwig van Beethoven was a musical prodigy whose talent earned admiration early on. But in his late 20s, he began losing his hearing, a devastating blow for a composer. Despite the condition worsening until he was completely deaf, Beethoven wrote some of his most beloved pieces during this time, including his Ninth Symphony. He communicated through written notes and embraced an inner world of sound no one else could hear. His defiance against despair and his brilliance reshaped classical music forever. Like Paul, who wrote the New Testament letters from prison, Beethoven's silence became his symphony. Franklin D. Roosevelt, a U.S. president, was told he would never walk again, yet he carried a nation. FDR was born into privilege but faced his greatest challenge at age 39 when he contracted polio, which left him paralyzed from the waist down. Though doctors doubted he'd ever walk again, Roosevelt trained relentlessly and learned to stand with braces. He entered politics undeterred, eventually becoming the 32nd President of the United States. His leadership during the Great Depression and World War II is considered transformational, and he remains a symbol of resilience and hope to millions.
Beethoven and Roosevelt didn't have easy roads. But their stories remind us that even when the world sees limits, God still sees possibility. If you're walking through something difficult today, know this: your journey matters, and you're not walking alone.
In this next segment, we witness stories that remind us weakness isn't the end of faith. It's often the beginning.
What does God do with grief and rejection? This short reflection looks at how sorrow became purpose for two unlikely voices, Edith Piaf and Winston Churchill. Through heartbreak, a greater plan still unfolded. God often births beauty out of brokenness. Like David in the Psalms, Piaf's sorrow turned into soul-lifting song.
Edith Piaf from France. She was broken by grief, lifted by song. Edith was born in Paris in 1915. Piaf was abandoned by her mother and raised in poverty by her grandmother in a brothel. She sang on the streets to survive and lost her only child to meningitis at age 2. Despite these tragedies, her haunting voice and emotional depth captivated audiences. She became one of France's most beloved singers, known for songs like La Vie en Rose and Non, je ne regrette rien. God chooses unlikely leaders for critical moments. Like Esther, Churchill was placed for such a time as this. Winston Churchill, a Prime Minister from the United Kingdom, he was cast aside and then called to lead when everything was at stake. Before becoming one of Britain's most iconic Prime Ministers, Churchill's political career was riddled with setbacks. He was blamed for the disastrous Gallipoli campaign in World War I and spent years in political exile during the 1930s, a period he called his wilderness years. His views were often unpopular, and he was seen out of touch. But when World War II broke out, his warnings about Nazi Germany proved prescient, and he was called upon to lead. His speeches and resolve helped rally a nation through its darkest hours.
The Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and sometimes He uses them to carry nations. Whether you're grieving or waiting for your moment, don't give up. In God's hands, even the wilderness has purpose.
These reflections bring real-life testimonies of people who started low, stumbled hard, but trusted higher.
God's timing is never late, and it's never too early. This short reflection shares stories of people who began again when the world had counted them out. But grace had other plans. Even Moses doubted his timing, yet God uses the unlikely and the late bloomers to deliver healing and hope.
Jean Griswold, 1930 to 2017, a home care entrepreneur. She was diagnosed with MS and wheelchair-bound. Griswold founded Griswold Home Care at 52. Her company now assists the elderly and disabled across the U.S., a visionary who turned personal limitation into social service. And here are some stories of folks who are still alive and kicking. Jim Carrey, living in a van, still believing in laughter. Jim Carrey's journey from poverty to stardom is as dramatic as any of his movie roles. Raised in Ontario, Canada, his family's financial struggles hit hard when his father lost his job. They ended up living in a van, and Jim worked as a janitor while still attending high school. At just 15, he dropped out to support his family full-time. He performed comedy in clubs at night, sometimes bombing so badly that he considered giving up. But his relentless commitment paid off, and eventually, his rubber-faced charisma landed him roles in The Mask, and later, blockbuster films like Ace Ventura and The Truman Show. Halle Berry, from the US, homeless but refusing invisibility. Halle Berry grew up in a racially mixed neighborhood in Cleveland and was raised by her single mother after her father abandoned the family. In her early 20s, she moved to New York City to chase acting dreams and found herself living in a homeless shelter when funds ran dry. Berry refused to give up, even when faced with rejection and instability. She started landing roles in television and then made her breakthrough with Boomerang opposite Eddie Murphy. Eventually, she became the first African-American woman to win the Academy Award for Best Actress for her role in Monsters Ball.
Jean, Jim, Halle, each began in hardship. But God delights in raising up what the world has passed by. If you feel seemingly unseen or fallen behind, remember, His grace isn't bound by time. You're not forgotten, you're not finished. He sees and He still calls you forward.
These next stories show how God can raise up purpose from even the most unlikely beginnings, just like He did with Joseph.
God often plants greatness in humble soil. Just like Joseph, some are sold out, misunderstood, and forgotten until God reveals the purpose behind the pain. These stories remind us discomfort doesn't mean disfavor. It often means you're being stirred, prepared to fly.
Our channel is called Rise Like an Eagle. Well, here's a look at the actual bird's life, the interesting eagle. She builds her nest in the tallest trees or on the loftiest mountain ledges. One who has watched her construct her nest relates that she first lays down thorns, jagged stones, and all manner of sharp objects, which seem utterly incredible materials for the purpose. Then she covers it thickly with wool, feathers, and fur of animals she has killed. The nesting place thus becomes soft and comfortable, a delightful home for the birds which the mother will hatch. But the little creatures are not destined to remain in this inviting cradle so laboriously prepared for them. The time will come when the mother will stir up the nest. With her sharp talons, she will begin to point the sharp protrusions in their flesh. Up to this time, the tiny creatures have had their food delivered and dropped into their mouths. After the nest has been stirred up, the eagles become so miserable and unhappy, they are willing to get out and go somewhere else. This is the mother's objective in picking out from the nest all the downy material with which it was originally lined and casting it to the wind. It is not cruelty on her part, but rather an effort to produce discontent with the old life of ease and to whet their desire to move on to maturity. Nearly 200 years ago, there lived in England a man whose name was William Wilberforce. God seemed to say to him, "I want you to free all the slaves in the British Empire." Humanly speaking, Wilberforce could not do it. He was a cripple and a hunchback. His body was so twisted that a writer of that day said he looked like a human corkscrew. The majority of the leaders did not want the British Empire to stop the slave trade. Wilberforce believed that nothing was impossible with God. He believed he could do all things in Christ's strength. On the day of his funeral, when his worn-out body was put beneath the flagstones of Westminster Abbey, the British Parliament passed a law that every slave who lived beneath the British flag be freed. "I am a lucky man," white-bearded Pierre Renoir told his friends. "Now I can do nothing but paint." He was in a wheelchair, this shy little man, humming off-key, his fingers and joints twisted by rheumatism. Strapped to one hand was an artist's brush, with which he made painful strokes on the canvas in front of him. Yet, to look at his easel, no one would have guessed how much he suffered. He painted only beauty. He was already famous and could have rested on his past glories. But he forced his stony hands to create still more loveliness. Later, collectors and museums were to pay small fortunes for the fruits of his determination. He got things done because he wanted to do things. He could not tolerate doing nothing. But Renoir did not need the heavy time of illness to make him want to do something. He was a genius, and a large ingredient in genius is a wish to get things done that is stronger than one's natural inclination to laziness.
They faced rejection, ridicule, loss, even physical pain. But they pressed on, not because the path was easy, but because their purpose pulled them forward. You may not feel ready, and the world may not yet see your value. But that doesn't mean you're not already becoming. Keep going. The story you're living might just become the strength someone else needs tomorrow.
This section reminds us that even in the darkest valleys, faith can carry you forward, not just for yourself, but for those you're called to lift.
You were made to rise again, not in your strength alone, but in His. This is Rise Like an Eagle.
Rise like an eagle. Rise like an eagle. Faith, strength, motivation.
Like Job, stripped of much, but unwavering in faith, these lives shine through restored purpose. But even in loss, God restores. And from that restoration, purpose is reborn.
Like Job, stripped of much, but unwavering in faith, these lives shine through restored purpose. Bethany Hamilton, missing an arm, but not her fire. At age 13, Bethany Hamilton was a rising surfing star in Hawaii when she was attacked by a 14-foot tiger shark and lost her left arm. Despite the trauma, she returned to surfing just 1 month later. She relearned how to ride waves with a custom board and adapted her technique to compete again. By age 15, she won first place in a national competition. Her story became the basis of the film Soul Surfer, and she's since become a motivational speaker, author, and symbol of fearless perseverance.
Andrea Bocelli. From Italy, Bocelli was born with congenital glaucoma and became completely blind at age 12 after a football accident. Despite this, he pursued music passionately, studying law while singing in piano bars. His breakthrough came when Luciano Pavarotti helped promote his demo tape. Bocelli's voice has since touched millions, and he's become one of the most successful classical crossover artists in history.
Mercy Johnson from Nigeria. Mercy Johnson, born in 1984, now one of Nollywood's top actresses, grew up in extreme poverty. Her family lived in an unfinished building with no roof, and she worked as a housemaid to support them. She faced rejection early in her acting career, but persisted. Her talent and resilience eventually led to her stardom, and she now uses her platform to advocate for women and children.
If you've lost something or someone, if you feel like a piece of your story has been torn away, let these lives remind you, God still writes in broken lines. And sometimes, the greatest healing doesn't come from what's returned, but from what is redeemed.
Every scar tells a story. These final voices speak of human resilience and remind us that in our own lives it is Christ who turns pain into purpose and lifts the lowly with strength from above.
When God lifts someone up, it's never just for them alone. It's to light the way for others, to show what faith-fueled resilience can do, not only in your life, but for generations to come.
Trevor Noah from South Africa. Born during apartheid to a black mother and white father, a union that was illegal at the time. Trevor Noah's early life was marked by secrecy and danger. He grew up in Soweto, navigating poverty and racial tension. Comedy became his escape and his weapon. Today, he's a global star and former host of The Daily Show, known for his sharp wit and insightful commentary. Patoranking from Nigeria. Before becoming a reggae dancehall sensation, Patoranking, born in 1990, worked as a bricklayer and sold rat poison on the streets. He lived in a one-room shack and struggled to afford studio time. His breakthrough came with the hit Alubarika, and he's since become a major voice in African music, known for uplifting messages and infectious rhythms. There is also Rick Hansen. Wheels didn't limit his journey, they defined it. Rick Hansen, a Paralympian and activist from Canada. A teenager who became a global champion and advocate. Paralyzed at 16, Hansen didn't just compete, he circled the globe in his wheelchair, raising awareness and funds for spinal cord research. His journey broadcasts a powerful message. Wise endurance can change the world. Think about William Kamkwamba from Malawi. He didn't wait for permission. He started where he was, with what he had. The seed of a school. William Kamkwamba. In drought-stricken Malawi, 14-year-old William dreamed of bringing electricity to his village. With no access to books beyond a local library and a pile of scrap metal, he built a windmill from bicycle parts and spare wood. Today, he's an inventor, engineer, and author who reminds the world, I try and I made it. Resilience isn't the absence of struggle. It's the pulse beneath every scar, the breath after every breakdown, the quiet voice inside that whispers, "You're not finished." Some let the world's doubt write their ending, but not these people, not now, not ever. Because the ones who made it through didn't just survive, they rose.
Your comeback isn't only for your healing, it's for your calling. So others can see what God can do through brokenness and bold belief. If the world has underestimated you, let them watch what happens when God lifts you. Because you weren't meant to stay buried. You were meant to rise and lead others home.